All right, and we're live. What's going on, people? It's Uncle Hotep back at it again, and I got another interview lined up. I got one of the good members of Hotep, my man Jordan. Uh, Jordan, why don't you introduce yourself to the people? Tell you how you are, who you are. Excuse me.
Like you said, my name is Jordan, and all in all, I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy from central Pennsylvania, doing everything that he can to raise his family and provide something better for them going forward. And I happen to be a very problematic Ashy Hotep. That's something else. Yeah, they really don't like me.
Yeah, the Ashy Hotep seems to be the king comeback for people that get subscribed. I've been get called Ashy Hotep plenty of times. It's quite sickening.
I'm
Uh,
telling you, we need more T-shirts, Ashy Hotep T-shirts. We need to make it a brand like that.
you're right about that. You're right about that. Um, Now you mentioned to me that you do a lot of community outreach and community work in the community. Can you care to describe that to the people?
My community-based work is summed up in three parts. One part political. I happen to be a very active political field operative within the community, so I do a lot of work, door to door. I do a lot of work gathering information, intelligence on communities, what they want, what they need, trying to bring over votes, raising money, all that kind of stuff I do, especially here in the Harrisburg area. I did a lot of work with the African American Chamber of Commerce, trying to gain more access and more flexibility. Secondly, I do a lot of work with my faith. I happen to be a very devout Roman Catholic. I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus, so we do a lot within the community. Just going out, spreading the faith, spreading cheer, singing to sick people, all that kind of stuff. Pancake breakfasts, feeding the homeless, that and what I like, since we're in Star Wars season, everyone's got the Star Wars bug. I happen to be involved with a project known as Urban Jedi Knights, founded by one of my close friends, Greg Jones, last February. That's meant to sort of provide a platform for inner city youth, artists, musicians. They make use of all of that in creating, cinematic content on their YouTube channel. They do birthday parties, all that kind of stuff, just to sort of broaden the meaning of urban and just sort of offer these kids who are underprivileged more opportunities to just have fun. Because a lot of young black men are just taught that they're not allowed to have fun. They're not allowed to put a smile on their face and have some joy in their heart. So that's something that I've really liked being a part of as of lately.
Okay. Did you see Star Wars? What did you think of it?
It sucked. I didn't like it. I'm an old school head, so I really didn't like the new Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I seen a bootleg, right? But I was looking to see. I was like, man, I still want to see it in the theater so I can get the like experience and like see if I can catch it, see if it changes on me. But I'm looking online today, and I was like there was no seats available. Still, I'm like, man, um,
I went opening day. I went opening day, and some nog brought his like 1 year old. He was crammed up in the corner with me, crying in my ear the whole time. It was bad. It was bad. But the movie itself, it's a beautiful movie to look at, but it's not good. if you're a, I mean, if you're an old school fan, I don't think you'll like it.
yeah, I didn't. From what I've seen, I didn't like. I didn't think it was super terrible. Like I didn't think it was bad as the one previous. I just thought it could have been done a lot better. Um, but anyway, but you say you the community stuff. You do a lot of stuff, and I thank you for doing that. I think the community needs more brothers like you. Um, what do you think? What do you think the participation of people in the such community outreaches? Do we need more of that? It seems to me that we need more of that. Like, and if we do need more, what angle or what direction should people look to try to help the community?
Okay, so with community based work, okay, there are two big problems that really face us. One, a lot of people, they basically figure I can't help the community because I can't even help myself.
Right.
A lot of people feel like they're in the position where they're barely making it, so they're not even interested in seeing what they can do to help. And what we have to get out to people is it doesn't always have to be money. You don't always have to give money to a cause. Sometimes just your time can be even more valuable. Because right. I don't know about you, but lugging boxes of the canned goods people donate, that's work. Right. And just the hour of helping lug those boxes helps you build upon a community. And you really can't have a community if you don't have families. That's another big part. So there's no tie-ins amongst people because they feel atomized, their own family is broken apart, and if their family is contained and their family is surviving, it's almost like people raise their families apart from their communities, especially in this day and age. And I'm guilty of it myself. A lot of people, if you see someone else's kid doing something else, how likely are you to go tell their mom? Ask yourself, like little things like that are that's what break down community bonds, and that's what makes people less likely to want to go out of their way to improve the community. Because it's all social. It's all about how we interact with each other. When you go door to door in a black neighborhood, 9 times out of 10, they're not even going to open the door for you. If they, at least in the white neighborhoods, they'll open the door and tell you to go fuck off. They're not going to hide in the kitchen with the lights off.
You're definitely right about that. Yeah, that's something I need to get into, like the helping other people and stuff like that in the community. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily just automatically mean money. And you raised a good point, like you don't have that community, parenting anymore or anything like that. Like if you see somebody's kids doing bad, like nowadays people be just like, they just close the door. They don't say nothing. They don't call the other people's parents. You can write them an email. All these forms of communication we got. We got email. You got IG. You got Snapchat. You got Facebook. You got all these ways to send these people's parents a message. If you see something going wrong, but it just doesn't seem to be happening, and that's a shame, I think.
I think it's escaping me. I forget who I was speaking to, but I was talking to a woman who said she's a member of the PTA, but she doesn't have any of the parents' numbers. That doesn't make any sense,
right? That doesn't.
You should know all of the parents. You should know all of the families who are going to be part of your child's life from K to 12. That's right. That's where they go throughout the entire day. That's where they're going to be formed into who they are. And everyone knows children are more influenced by their peer group than by their parents. So you got to know who are your kids going to be around.
Right.
I don't know. That's just me. Maybe I'm a fossil. So maybe my ideas of how a community is supposed to work are a little antiquated.
No. I think you got some good ideas. We need more people like you. Let's step into the political arena. I think you're in we're in the Hotep Twitter group chat. Whatever you want. And it seems like I've noticed you're more politically. Some people aren't really politically connected, but you seem to be a little bit. How would you describe the political views of Black America in 2017?
Wrong. But no, in all seriousness. I think that Black America behaves like any minority group behaves.
Okay.
In that they parlay their votes into a pretty consistent voting block, but because of numbers, they're in a situation where their votes can tip the scales one way or the other, but they cannot win on their own in most parts of the country. A place like Washington D.C., yeah, black people they can win without any white support. But for the vast majority of the country, and definitely on no state level, no national level, black people can't win anything by themselves. So they're in a position where they kind of have to create coalitions, which is why we see black becoming POC, and why they're teaming up with feminists, and why we're teaming up with Mexicans and all these people who have nothing to do with black people, so to speak. But because it's just coalition building, because no one of these groups has enough power and influence to win on their own, so they band together like minority groups do. That's just how that works, in order to vote against the majority. That's very simple tactics. Is it right or wrong? I reserve judgment. I'm a little biased just because I'm a very conservative person, so I think they should vote the way I want them to vote. But it's really that simple. But splitting the black vote historically devalues it, just because there aren't that many of us.
Right.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Since we're only 13%, you have to make that 13% count, which is, I think, something black people know instinctively, and that's why they're led to sort of get these 98% voting one-way numbers.
Okay. Yeah, and kind of showed with the recent, the Alabama election, for the senator, which what's his name?
Roy Moore. Roy Moore lost to Doug Jones.
Doug Jones. I keep getting the name mixed up. Now everybody was like, afterwards, which was amazing to me. Everybody was like, black women saved Alabama. I'm what the heck is going on with that? I didn't understand that. Because Charles Barkley went down there and he took credit for a lot of stuff. I don't know how much he really did. Now, a lot's being said about Roy and his being alleged pedophilia, whatever, but at the end of the day, what my whole point is, if you voted for Jones, they voted 98% for Jones. Right. Now, what are they going to get out of that 98% vote? You know what I'm saying? I think a lot of times Black Americans.
That's a tricky question to ask.
Okay.
It's a very tricky question to ask, because I'm not sure most black voters know what they want.
Okay.
I'm not sure most, if any, voter knows what they want, because a lot of voters want things that are contradictory in and of themselves. If you ask people, if you poll them, do you want a small government? A lot of them will say yes. If you poll those same people, do you want entitlements to be reduced? They'll say hell no, and they'll march in the street with pitchforks and torches. So you can't have both. And a lot of people haven't come to the conclusion as to what exactly they want out of a specific election or out of a specific elected official. So it's really hard to answer that question. If we're talking about the blacks who were voting in Alabama, mostly liberal blacks or conservative blacks who don't think that the conservative agenda benefits them, what are they going to get from Doug Jones being elected? They're hopefully an opportunity to sit on the ball for the next couple of years and stall more in the Senate. Because the Senate seat's very powerful. You get things like filibusters and make the Democratic filibuster stronger. So if you oppose Trump's agenda, then it isn't a black. If the black person opposes Trump's agenda, then it's in their best interest to vote Democrat in Alabama, just so that you have that seat that'll help you stall until the next set of elections comes about. As far as actual policy changes, I'm not sure. Just because they're still the minority party, whether or not Doug Jones wins. So I don't think anyone's actually expecting policy changes as much right now.
Gotcha. Now about that, blacks and Trump. You know, it what
MAGA.
amazes. Go ahead.
I said MAGA.
Yeah. You know what amazes me that like before he ran for office, you know, Trump was pretty well liked in the black community. You know what I mean? He was pretty much the persona of what, you know, what black Americans wanted to grow up to be or rise to be, you know, a big powerful guy. You know, he had tons of money, had was flashy, had all types of model wives and stuff of that nature. And yet all of a sudden, you know, he first, well, the first thing he goes on a Republican, even though he's not the like the clearest conservative Republican you've ever seen. So I don't know what the point the thing was with that. But is the liberal agenda that strong that I mean, I guess it is. I know I'm answering the question, but is it that strong that it can just take everybody, switch everybody's opinion. Now all of a sudden, everybody, every black person is supposed to hate Trump, and if you don't hate Trump, you're a coon.
Yeah, but, I mean, think about it. They have almost a monopoly of the media that they're consuming. They have a monopoly of their familial pressures. You know what I mean? So their kids are all going to the schools in which they have control over. So it is, you know, very easy to get that message across. Even though I like to say that, you know, the rappers that black people love are like a fusion between Donald Trump and Ric Flair most of the time, but but that doesn't matter. And you know, once you get labeled as a racist by the media, whether you actually are or not, black people, because of the history in America, they react very strongly. They react very strongly, and it's very hard to convince them otherwise. They would rather, you know, be risk averse and say this person is, you know, going to be openly racist, then I don't want anything to do with it. It's better for us to at least go with someone who might be secretly racist and get something out of the deal. What that is, I don't know. You'd have to ask individual black people what they want.
Yeah, yeah. It's just amazing to me. You know, especially during the past election. You know what I mean? I heard it all from people, especially in the barbershop. People were giving me hell. You know what I mean? And I couldn't. I couldn't. It just surprised me that it's not like, and a lot of people just didn't like Hillary. You know what I mean? They weren't really excited about her. You know, and they still were like, "Yo, man, but you can't do Trump." Like, well, I can't. To me, the way they thought about Trump is the way I thought about Hillary. To be honest, you know what I mean?
Okay.
That's how that's how I looked at it. But now about the Black Americans in voting. You know what I mean? Do you think now my big thing, like I like to tell people, I think Black America has to be able to swing their votes, their block votes, one way or the other. I don't think we should be like latched on to the Democratic Party. You know what I mean? We were latched on for 8 years. We gave we gave the Democrats Barack Obama twice now, and then I don't think, you know, the Democrats certainly did not hold up to their end of the bargain. You know, but like you said, what does Black America really want? What do you think say say we swing our votes to one way or the other? What should Black America ask to further help themselves from whatever political party they vote for?
Okay. Well, this is a tough one. I think if Black America were going to decide to more consciously vote as a unit and use their voting capability to leverage, you know, against various political parties, I think things that all of Black America would be able to potentially get behind. You'd have to keep it. You have to keep it on economics, most likely, um, and you'd have to, yeah, you definitely have to keep it on economics, because even as a staunch social conservative, I don't think we'd be able to hold together a black coalition on any sort of social identity, and because that's getting worse and worse by the day. It would have to be economics. It'd have to be um, more open markets, and by open markets, not necessarily heavily deregulated markets, just lowering the barriers of entry. because that tends to be what catches up a lot of black entrepreneurs is just the startup thing, you know. Um, so that, and on a national level, see, this is so hard for me because I think about politics very differently than I think the average black person does. Because when I sit in the barbershop and I hear people talk about politics, you know, it's revealed that they don't know how the government works. You
Right.
know, they don't know what the president actually does and is allowed to do. They don't know what Congress does and what the Congress is allowed to do. They don't understand the Supreme Court and how that relates to states and, you know, the national government and localities. So it's difficult for me to put out a plan for these people who don't know what they're talking about. I mean, I think if anything, if you're going to have black people voting in blocks like this, you have to do it at local levels only, because the only gripes that I hear from black people who want to be politically motivated seem to be things that can only be fixed on local levels, and local levels are where black votes have the most sway, right? Because in a black city, you don't need white support to get a new mayor. You don't need white support to get new DAs. You don't need white support to get a new sheriff. And that's what black people tend to be mad about, right? It's whenever they want to talk about systemic racism, it's that they want reforms in the criminal justice system. That's primarily going to come from your mayor. That's primarily going to be come from, you know, your police chiefs and your DAs. If you're mad that Jerome is more likely to be prosecuted for having a dime bag than Johnny is, you need a new DA. You don't need a new president. The president doesn't deal with that. The president deals with whether or not we invade Iran, right? That's what you need to be thinking of. Like,
Right.
But it's window dressing, so it's very difficult to lay out that kind of plan.
Yeah. I think, well, a lot of things I see, you know, is a lot of people want police reform. A lot of people want criminal justice reform. That's stuff that's based around in their cities, but they seem to be voting for these same people, like the Rahm Emanuels. And, you know, I was reading what's this tweet? You know, hold on. Like, hold on, wait, quick. There's somebody tweeted that, you know, the murders are falling a bit in New York City, Chicago, Houston, Detroit, but they're rising substantially in Philadelphia, Charlotte, Columbus, and Baltimore. Now, those other cities where it's rising, well, all of them really has been like democratically run. You know what I mean? And you know, I still think we should base ourselves on economic policies, something that help us economically. You know, I think a lot of that stuff can be helped. You know, we had to do some cultural change, you know, in these areas. You know what I mean? That I think a lot of this crime and stuff like that. Well, a lot of times, man, they're putting themselves in them situations. You know what I mean? The less crime, the less violent crime, the less interaction you're gonna have with these police forces.
You're
You know?
100% right. I'm a proponent that there's absolutely no law that's gonna save the black community. All you can do is get a benefit here, get a benefit there, and get something that might help you along the way. But ultimately, it's going to be a people's culture that decides their fate, and our culture is a corpse. It's gross. There's not a lot of good in it, and I'm going to be called a lot of bad names for saying that, but we've fallen a long way from what we could be, from what we have been, and it's going to take a long time to do any meaningful repair. And all of that meaningful repair is going to come from individual people deciding this is not good. I'm going to change this mistake, and I'm going to teach my kids to do the same thing. And we have to build on that, I think there was a great tweet that I saw the other day. It says, hey, since all black people can't do this in mass organizations, how about we break up into little teams called families?
Man, that's a good one.
And each of those teams can work towards, getting a little bit better each time. And then over the course of the next 100 years, we'll look back on 2017 as a dark time, as dark ages, as we ascend to something better.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. You know, that's that's my big thing is culture. The black culture has to change, especially black Americans. You know, I see a lot of immigrants come over here, both black and Indian, Asian. You know, they come over here, and the thing they stick with is their culture, and they stick with their families. And when they stick with that, you know, they can make strides. Even if it's not their first generation, but their second, they're there. You know what I mean? They're off to the races. You know what I mean? And some are that first generation. Boom. I mean, the first generation of kids, they're off and running. So a lot of times, you know, and if we see that, and I don't understand how we can't take some of the things they do and incorporate it in our own, and then be off and running, you know. But I say that to people, and they're like, "Oh man, they're I like it as excuses." A lot of times they said, "Oh, they come from countries that have their own culture and stuff like that, or they come from country they're well to do and they come over here." Like that doesn't matter. You know what I mean? I mean the same immigrants that coming from South America that y'all say are sweeping and wiping the toilets. This is what they tell me. They wiping the toilets. We don't want those jobs. Those Mexicans, they picking the fruit out in the fields. We don't want those jobs. But their kids, kids aren't picking the fruit anymore. You know what I'm saying? There's a progression, and I don't see why we can't have that same progression. You know what I mean? It seems like if we get in a rut, it's there's a whole group of people in a rut, and they just stay there for generations on generations. You know what I mean? Um,
Arrested development, right? It's you could go to fatherlessness, and you could go to the glorification of anti-authoritarianism and the black community. Everyone wants to be anti-society. Everyone wants to be anti-tradition, mostly because I think a lot of black people resent the traditions that we do have here in America because of how we got here. So they sort of harbor that, and they want to rebel against it, even if it would be for their own good. You know, there have a lot of people who, on the flip side, also resent Africa. I remember when I was a little kid, I was kind of mad at Africans when I found out that they're the ones who sold us. You know, I said, I told my father, I said, you know, those bastards sold us to white people for horses and tobacco, and it wasn't even Newports. That's what that's an actual quote. But all these things compound, all these things come together, and all these things just sort of they make it difficult. And of course, you know, everyone wants the red pill. You know, you throw in IQ. IQ matters. You know, especially IQ matters. You know, violence matters, and smart black kids who don't feel safe matter. Black kids who have mental disabilities and have depression and things like that, not being able to get help at a young age because their parents don't want to admit that there might be something wrong matters. A culture where that is seen as not an illness to be cured, but a failure of some sort. That matters. All of this matters, and it's almost like you don't know where to start. And that's kind of what brings me around the faith. I think that not just black people, but all of mankind are irreparably broken from the start. We're broken creatures, and there's only one way to get to where we need to go. And that was revealed to mankind throughout his son Christ and his church he established on earth. And that's a foundation. That's a 2,000-year-old tradition and foundation with immortal truths that you can take and you can apply to your life, and you can better yourself week after week after week after week. And when you look back on yourself 5 years from now, you'll think to yourself, wow, I'm better. And because you're better, maybe you'll be a better husband to your wife. And when you're a better husband to your wife, you'll be better parents. And your kids will develop into better people, more productive members of society. So all of these things have chain effects. And I think that is the most important thing. I think that so goes the church and so goes the faith of the people, so goes their culture, because the root of culture is cult. Like the culture is how people ultimately view God. And I think despite our high church attendance in the black community, black people ultimately worship material things. They're very materialists, and a lot of them worship themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Now, like, I'm glad you brought up your faith, because I'm starting to notice something in just on just the Twitterverse. I know Twitterverse isn't the populace, how the black populace feels. I think the Twitterverse is just like a small sliver of that. But what
Yeah,
I've
it's
noticed,
a
I think,
sample size of extremes, really.
yeah, it's probably the extreme. It's an example of the extremism. But I see a lot of people, not engaged. I think there's a rise of black atheism that I've never seen before. There's a rise of, there's a lot of disenchantment with the church. I mean, some of that stuff is probably warranted. Now, my opinion is, like, I think the church can be a vital tool into reshaping, the black community, black culture, so to speak. But I mean, there's issues that have to be fixed in it. You know what I mean? Um, I think a lot of people look at the pastor and everyone else as, they say the money goes into the church, it doesn't come back out into the community. I think that happens a lot. You know, um, and you got these TV preachers and things of that nature. Um, what do you think? What do you think the state of the spiritual state of Black America? How do you see it, and if the church can do what can the church do to help the community? And if they need to fix some things in the church, what do you think they need to do?
Well, um, this is another tough question to ask because blacks are mostly Protestant. Almost all of them are Protestants, um, specifically Southern Protestants, and so right from the gate, I have a very strong bias because I think they're all heretics to begin with, right? So, I'm not the best person for that. I think the best thing that they could do is leave their church and become Catholic. Even though we have our own problems in the church. And I think an influx of legitimately faithful laity would be great for the Catholic Church because we do have our own problems in our hierarchy. But having a hierarchy and having something that is stable would be the atomized individualistic nature of what has become the black church, because with Protestant churches in general, whenever there's disagreement, you can just break off and make your own church, and that defeats the purpose of that church. That defeats the purpose of having a social center where there are agreed upon moral expectations and obligations that people are gonna hold you to. You can't have a moral standard if you can change the moral standard at any time.
Right.
That's why I'm extremely anti like slut shaming and things like that. Slut shaming is good. Shame is good. You know, you need to feel shame for your actions because with shame comes your conscience saying this is wrong, and that's where your regret comes, and that's how you repent, and actual repentance where you're not going to do it again. And I don't think we have a lot of that in the black church. I think a big part of the reason for that is their sola fide teachings, but that's getting more into theology. You're asking more about structure, and as far as changing the structures of the black church, the Protestant black church, to be more conducive to aiding the communities, that's an issue of men. That is an issue of individuals, and you have to just get people out. You have to recognize that being a priest does not make someone untouchable.
Right. Right.
So you have to. So if you know your priest is a thieving, lying son of a bitch, you got to get rid of him.
You're
To
right.
learn how to get rid of him without severing the congregation, which I think is possible. Um, but this is just me, speaking because I'm not an expert on the black church because I don't go to a black church. I'm not a Protestant, so I interact. The only black people I interact with at church are immigrants, and they're doing fine. They're Africans, and they're doing fine. So I can't really speak on it.
Do you find that the immigrants that come over here, they're majority Catholic? Is that what they join?
Yeah, at least in the first generation. The first generation are mostly Roman Catholics, just because if they're coming from South America, that's where the conquistadors and everything like that. The Spaniards were very strong in Catholicism, so they're doing their thing. And in Africa, they were mostly conquered by the French in West Africa, so the French influence created a lot of Catholicism there. Depending on the part of Africa they come from, they might be Protestant, like mainline Protestants, because of the Anglo influence from being ruled by the British. But by and large, a combination of the West Africans and South Americans, the majority of immigrants that I've come in contact with are Roman Catholic. The second generation is often drawn to evangelical branches like Presbyterianism, mostly because of the problems we have in the Catholic Church, which we do in America. We have a lot of problems in the Catholic Church. Primarily, a lot of SJWism is hurting the pulpit.
Okay. Now, yeah, I've had a little contact with the Catholic Church when I was coming up in grade school. I went to Catholic Church, and it's a drastic difference in the black church. Do you think sending kids to Catholic school and stuff like that is maybe that is a way they can integrate? I mean, you can get what's the word for it? You can get them a first connection to the Catholic Church. Do you think
Yes,
that
and
works a lot?
it's also a great reason for black people to vote Republican. School vouchers,
Right.
because Catholic Church is expensive, and on the state level, no one's gonna vote for school vouchers that is a Democrat. That's against their platform. They want to throw money at the education problem. If you're black and you're thinking about sending your kid to charter school, public school, Catholic school, other religious institutions, school vouchers are good for you because they're going to help you attach the money to your kid so that you can go to the school of your choice. And I really think Catholic school would be good, not just because they're better schools, period. The numbers show that they are superior schools, and it can wean people into the faith, and that can only do good if you're adding people to the faith.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think I think that's one thing that school choice is another thing that needs to be looked at, and that's one of the reasons I voted for Trump. Like I have a kid now, I have another one on the way. I was like, man, I don't see why people wouldn't want to vote for the vouchers so you can have at least the opportunity. You have multiple opportunity to send. You can send them here, you can send them there. You know what I mean? Why would you just for these schools that are already failing? Now you want to just throw more money at them, and they'll take the money and they'll continue to fail, or you can get a voucher, and you can like, hey, you can go interview these schools. You can go, hey, let's take a walk around. Let's see how it does, how you think your child will do. Like why doesn't Black America? I couldn't understand it. I'm like that the most because a lot of people.
I don't get it either. They say things like, "Hey, our schools are testing poorly because the books are old," but your kid can't read the book, whether it's old or new. And if he can, like, I'm not spending $500 to buy him books to draw dicks in. I know how middle schoolers act. They just go through and put mustaches on all the pictures. They're not fucking reading the textbook. Like,
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't understand it. Like, I hope. No, I think Bestie DeVos is working on that, but I'm waiting for that opportunity for vouchers, man, because like I really don't want to send my daughter to public school. I mean, that's almost that's almost out to me. You know what I mean? What else? About Twitter. Let's talk about Twitter and like. Oh, you got a second? You need something?
Oh, no, no, no. The wife.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Um, let's talk about Hotep and Twitter. You know what I mean?
Okay.
How the the Hotep has become a some people, the majority of people don't, Black Americans don't like it. You know what I mean? They use it as a derogatory term. Some people do. Some people, it's almost become like a mind state. It's like a line drawn in the sand, man. Like if you say certain things, they're gonna be like, "Oh man, get that Hotep stuff out of here." Which I don't understand because, like, to me, in Black America, like if you stray off that plantation, for any subject, if you say, "Hey man, we got to curb the abortions," or Planned Parenthood is it needs to be investigated a little bit, they'll label it a Hotep thing. Why is it? Why is what I'm getting at is, why is Black America so quick to critique? They will kill their own. They will kill their own quick as hell. But anything else, they'll accept it. You know what I mean? They'll ride with it. Like the Democratic Party, they'll ride with it. But for their own people, like I would think Black America would listen to their own first. You know what I mean? If like you should have a diversity of thought. We don't have that diversity of thought in Black America for some reason. Like why? I'm trying to think, why is that?
Why don't we have a diversity of thought in Black America? Um, well, you hit the nail on the head in your question. You sort of answered your question with your question, and it's because it's stamped out. You know, we we're actually very good at shaming people in the Black community. We just don't shame the right things. Like, I mean, if people were shamed as hard for being Hoteps, or if people were shamed for being drug dealers selling poison to their own people as hard as they would be Hoteps, there'd be much less of them. You know,
You're right.
if
I never really thought of that. Yeah, you're right.
if you were ostracized, if someone found out that you were involved in drugs and suddenly you had no friends, and suddenly no girl would want you, and suddenly you found yourself in those kind of situations, there'd be less. It would be a much smaller population, and everyone would benefit from it. Okay. So the skill of in-grouping and out-grouping is lost to Black people. They just, in my opinion, they don't apply to the right things. So now we have people using the word Hotep as a derogatory term. The first time I ever heard it, I was reading an article in The Roots, from theroot.com, and it was explaining Hoteps as a group of people who use Black empowerment terminology and information to get women. That it was that was the gist of it. It was Hoteps are the people who are out here calling Black women queens so that you'll sleep with them, and are pushing polygamy, which is nonsense. And then this evolved into Hoteps are misogynist and yada yada yada. And the definition of Hotep, a lot like the definition of racism, mind you, is broadening to the point where it kind of includes everybody, so it doesn't mean anything. Once upon a time, a racist was someone who curb stomped you for that way that you looked. Now, a racist is someone who doesn't like dreads in the workplace. Congratulations, now racism doesn't mean anything. And I don't want to say Hotep doesn't mean anything, but what I do want to say that the term is broadening to the point where you'll have someone like me who is a Roman Catholic married to a white woman who's considered a Hotep, and on the other side you have Dr. Umar, and you have the Kangs over and Nation of Islam, who are all considered hoteps, at least in the Twitter context.
Yeah.
Mostly because we all believe, hey, there are two genders and people should get married before they have babies. That's probably smart, you know.
Yeah, that's you you mentioned Umar. I made a video about that. Like, people were dedicating their lives to take him down, man. Like, there was a YouTube channel, and for 8 months, this lady just made investigative videos on about Dr. Umar. I'm like, y'all would work this hard to take him down, but the same people y'all will say is white supremacy. Y'all won't even take half the time to investigate this, or call up jobs or call up judges and say, hey, you're doing this or that. They don't even take half the time. But to another black person, they will spend all the time. They got all the time in the world to do all that. You know what I mean? And a lot of people make excuses, for
call up judges. They don't know who their municipal judge is, let alone his phone number. Okay, and this is true for everybody. This is one of the reasons why democracy is dumb, because the level that is most important in our system, the local level, is the most ignored level. It always has the lowest turnout. It's always gets no attention. Most people don't know who their local senator is. Most people don't know who their local representatives are, or what they want, or what they do with their jobs. And since they're not active, they're not going to their county meetings. They're on YouTube looking up videos of Umar Johnson trying to take him down, instead of being at the county meeting talking to their county commissioner about filling the potholes and making it easy, making the city more beautiful, and the littering and things like that. They're not doing productive things with their life, like, I don't know, gardening or something. Like that would be more productive than trying to take down Dr. Umar. I don't know. And I'm not even a fan of Dr. Umar. I just think it's pointless to rapidly try to take this guy down.
Yeah, that was my point. Like, even if you don't, I certainly don't agree with him with everything he says, but I mean, he does make some occasional good points, and I wouldn't celebrate. What put me off to it, like, a lot of black folks was celebrating. They was at say your favorite team won the Super Bowl. That's how they were acting, because
Yeah.
Since Umar was getting, he has to go to court. I'm like, that was truly tasteless, and it's neither here nor there.
Well, I guess that's when you bring up the sort of Marxist ideology that the Marxism and communism is really deep. That rot is deep in a lot of black activism, and that's where you get the intersectional critical theory and stuff like that, where people will put you put their gayness before their blackness. They'll put their feministness before their blackness, and they'll put their blackness before other things, and you have the oppression Olympics type thing. So someone who believes in that and subscribes to that theory of power and institutions ultimately end up viewing Dr. Umar or people like him as instruments of white supremacy. Their reasoning goes, oppressing black people and liberating black people must include liberating black gay people. Therefore, if you're not for liberating black gay people, you're not for liberating black people. Therefore, you're helping white supremacy.
Gotcha.
That's their line of thinking. In a nutshell, I don't want to sell them short and oversimplify their whole insane ways of thinking. It ultimately falls down to communism. That is true, but that's the basics.
Okay.
I really hate commies. Can you tell?
All right. I'm gonna ask you this one more question about black conservatism. Now, I don't know if it's on the rise or there's more than than usual, or um, how can black conservatives like get their message out? You know what I mean? I think the black conservatives that are out or that are prominent, I think they have I think they just have a problem of getting their message across. Do they need to be cooler? I was thinking I was driving. I was thinking like I know we was going to have this interview. I meant to ask. I think like sometimes, black people love swag and like style. I think what I mean if they need a little bit more style or something. I don't know if it's that simple, but I mean, what can black conservatives do to get their message across to get to other blacks to maybe like, hey, you can um, understand their point of view.
Well, street credibility matters. So you can't be me. Like you do need that kind of credibility with the community. I can't tell them how to get it because I don't have it. But what I would say is first they have to decide if they are a conservative who's black or are they a black conservative, um, because there's a difference.
Right.
There's a big strain of conservatism that's like a colorblind conservatism, that is strictly by the numbers, strictly liberty based. A lot of it's very libertarian, um, own wing, and I'm not 100% sure how they can get ahead with black people. Ultimately, the message has fallen flat whenever it's been tried. Um, and then there's sort of black conservatism, which I think the way that black conservatism, so to speak, can be successful is by drawing explicitly on its roots, on like Dr. Martin Luther King Sr., Zora Neale Hurston, Booker T. Washington, and sort of drawing parallels between themselves and the secular saints of Black America. I think that could cause gains and that could cause some positive movements, and on top of that, just by being successful people. Um, I think you people you can't underestimate the value of like a Beyonce endorsement. You know what I mean? But if you are a kid in Philadelphia and you see the your barber, who's a small business owner, who's successful, who owns his own shop and who employs people and is providing jobs for the community, if he sits you down and he talks to you about why institutions matter and why tradition is important and why conservative policies are better for you, then black conservatism is more likely to grow. Those are things that have to happen. Yes, there needs to be street credibility. We need to do more to draw parallels to the history, because a lot of black conservatives sort of come across, whether it's true or not, they come across as if they want to just forget the history. And those who are examples, many of them may not even know they're examples of black conservatism in practice, need to get out in front and say, hey, I'm right here. This is what I did. This is how we do it. This is my plan. Because that's what the liberals do, right? The liberals, they come back from their HBCU and with their women's studies degree, and they tell their sob story and they show what they're doing and talk about what they've overcome, and everyone loves that underdog story and people attach to it and they identify with it. Identity is ultimately going to be the root of most people's political decisions. So black conservatism grows is through that shared identity.
Okay.
Does that make sense, or did I ramble a little too much?
No, that was a good answer. I greatly appreciate it. Hey, I appreciate you for coming on. I thank you. Let me interview you. Um, do you have any last words for the people, or where they can find you, or anything like that?
Yes. And I of course want to thank you for having me on. Um, of course, you could find me on Twitter at HeywoodJP. And I really want to put Urban Jedi Knights out there, right there in your backyard in Philadelphia. You can follow them on Twitter and Instagram at Urban Jedi _PHL, and the Facebook group is of the same name, Urban Jedi Knights PHL. If you are a musician, if you are an artist, if you are just someone who wants to be a part of this, and someone who wants to maybe book them for birthday party or some sort of event, you want to be a part of making the content, please get in touch with Greg. Please get in touch with Devin. They're always looking for people to be a part of the core team. They're growing, and this is something that can really bring the community together. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you again, Unk, for having me on today. And now I got to go deal with my in-laws.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on, and good luck with your in-laws, man. Appreciate it.
All right. God bless.
All right, God bless, man.